Perspective.
Oh, yeah. Okay, welcome to the Advanced Career Management session on research, service, and teaching. What we're hoping to discuss today are ways in which you can make those three areas align, integrate, balance, whatever's going to work for you in terms of your career. The Advanced Career Management is directed to associate professor level, although we're inclusive, so whatever area you're in or whatever level you're at, we hope that you find something useful in the discussion. So we're going to have a panel discussion today, but first we wanted to present some information. Oh, okay, there's our, wait a minute, you can go back. We are going to talk a little bit about the research, present some information on other kinds of programs that have been developed for mid-career faculty. And then we'll have a panel discussion, and we've asked people that we think have some insights to offer about this research service teaching relationship. Then we'll have a little breakout activity, and we do have some homework for you. And I think actually this is process is really about homework, so we'll introduce that, and then we'll do our wrap-up questions. And there is a post-session survey. So this is an advance initiative. It's part of the grant that we received. We have 3 initiatives going on, and in order to report back to advance and to assess what we're doing with these initiatives, there's a pre-survey, as you know, and then there'll be a post-survey for the events that we hold. So I hope that you'll participate in those surveys. Okay. So this is part of the Advanced Adaptation Grant, and what we're doing is we're adapting programs from other universities. This one's based on the University of Michigan LIFT program, which is their program that's directed to associate professors. There's a little bit different. What they do is they target people who have just made the promotion. And so people in the first or second year after they get tenure, and they have a half-day session where they do workshops and panel discussions. And so we're expanding on that, obviously. We're doing something that has a little bit more continuity. They do something after that session where you can sign up with a career coach. We're doing peer mentoring coaching through the rest of the year, and we'll inform you a little bit about that. So we're adapting their program to what we think will work at Tech. The research suggests that if we're looking at mid-career faculty, profession development, career enrichment, there are 3 levels that you can develop programming at. And the first is the individual level, and I think this is probably the most important. It has to do with assessing your own career directions and ambitions. Doing some planning and career skills, and we'll try to help you with some of those. In fact, we'll introduce some of those things today. And then the information that you need, for example, how to make the most of your sabbaticals, things like that, where information about resources, information about how to most effectively use those resources can be really helpful. So that individual level where you're directing things, and you're thinking about, reflecting on your own career ambitions and progress are important. At the department level, research suggests that networking opportunities are important, that expanding your networks across department boundaries, across disciplinary boundaries, across unit boundaries is important. Developing collegiality is collegial relationships helps in career development and in your own sense of satisfaction with your career. And so we're hoping that at these advanced work sessions, you get a chance to talk with other people. In fact, one of the things we'll try to do is put you in conversation with other people who aren't necessarily in your department or aren't necessarily in your discipline, so that you can share your observations, your ideas, the ways you understand the resources and things. So we're hoping to facilitate some of that networking. And that the role of the chair is always identified as something really important. And we do have an initiative that's directed to helping chairs understand a little bit better how to facilitate the progress of their faculty. So there is, we call it a responsive leadership initiative, and that will be rolling that out. So we will be addressing the chair level. And then at the institutional level, transparency and flexibility. And of course, transparency means something different depending on what level you're looking at. So, we are addressing some of that with the ADVANCE initiative and the way in which we're looking at criteria and how people engage with those things. Things like what are the criteria for going up for full and what is really counted. So we're working on some of that. And then work-life support, and we'll be talking about some of that as we go along in this session. We looked specifically at some recent research on mid-career faculty. It turns out that people are fairly satisfied with their jobs as mid-career faculty overall, but when you start parsing that out into particular aspects of the job, then we're not quite so satisfied. Things like the reward structure, or the support for research and teaching and service, those kinds of things, the satisfaction level tends to fall out a little bit. And then when you look at burnout, this is one of those levels where those points in your career where there can be an opportunity for burnout. There's a little bit more opportunity for burnout. So there's a lot of discussion in the literature about how to promote things like what they call vitality, which really for us means, refreshing your career, finding more energy, getting more energy for the things that you need to do. And then, of course, a number of intersectional issues that arise in the literature. So things like who gets the mundane management tasks, and how do those get counted, and do they count for you or against you, and how do stigmas and biases enter in for different kinds of identity issues and power issues. So some of the literature suggests that women, underrepresented faculty, carry more of that kind of load. But moving forward, we find that the mid-career level is one where you can think about refreshing your career goals. You can think about, what are my commitments? What kinds of things really, engage me? And how can I make the most of those in my career? Versus feeling like sometimes, you get tenure and then it's sort of like, I'm really not quite sure where I'm going or how I'm supposed to get there. But the mid-career point is a point where we think you can really engage in this re-energizing. And then developing your own advancement plan. And the literature suggests you can do a safe plan or a very ambitious plan, but you need to have some kind of plan. And so last time we talked about the idea that you should have some reflection on what do you want to be doing 1 year out, 5 years out, 10 years out, right? And so if you have some ideas about those sorts of things, it can really help in terms of creating a more structured sense of how you're engaging with different kinds of opportunities and why you're doing that, right? And also getting feedback and aligning your career with the kinds of opportunities and resources that are available to you. So those kinds of plans are things that you need to come up with on your own reflections, but then can really help you make the most of what's available to you. So that's what the literature tells us.
Sure.
We want to introduce our panelists.
We have three fantastic panelists with us today. We have Dr. Nancy Auer on the far side of the room there. We have Dr. Sherry Stacaro here. She's hiding from the projector.
I was supposed to not sit in front of the PowerPoint.
And then I apologize if I mess up your last name here.
Jazak.
Jazak. And we have Dr. John Jazak here. And the three panelists today will be engaging on two different sets of questions. We have questions on balance and questions on planning. And for those of you who have a handout, we have written the questions there for you so you can follow along or try to remember as you look back at the recording that we've got. But we want them to talk about how you best stay engaged in current and teaching research and service during mid-career, how you achieve a balance among teaching, research, and service, particularly when teaching and service expectations are increasing after tenure, and what do you do to maintain life, which is or family, balance, and self-care. I'll turn it over to the panel now.
If I can start with a brief opening, my thinking about engaging and staying current and all that wasn't necessarily all that deliberately planned. So just to be honest up front about that, but I'm very fortunate that I had a series of chairs who were very good advisors. So they earned my trust. And so when they offered me advice, I listened carefully and pretty much always said yes. One of the effects that came out of that was they helped me to find some new opportunities that were outside my comfort zone. So that helped with the vitality, and it helped to do some fresh exploring. And so that was true both in teaching and in research. So maybe that would be a piece of advice, is to be willing, or maybe even force yourself to stretch yourself beyond your comfort zone. So one example of that was working in nanotechnology education. I didn't know I had an interest in that, but it was amazing how it did bring together things I found I really did have interest in. And then it also opened up some new opportunities for collaborations on campus. It opened some doors to go serve on panels at National Science Foundation. And then it's like the dominoes started falling. So I'm very glad to have had that push and then said yes to follow through.
Yeah, I don't know if I've been great at balance at particular times, but I try really hard to be good at balance and staying engaged and current. One of the ways, I guess I'm really fortunate, my field is teacher education. So in some ways, there's sort of a natural cycle of rethinking things and staying current, because when I go to a research conference, for example, people are presenting research on teaching innovations that they've used in their classroom. So a lot of times, even though I'm going to research talks, I'm also picking up teaching innovations along the way, because people are trying new things and studying them and so forth. But I think even if that wasn't the case, I think, you know, there are opportunities to go to conferences or professional development or there's things like that to really start rethinking your teaching in a new way. I really wish I could find the source, because I read this years ago and I've tried to go back and find it and I can't. But I read something quite a while ago that said that it's unprofessional to change less than some percent of your teaching each year. And I want to say it's like 10 or 20%. I can't remember the number. That's why I want to find it. But it's unrealistic to change more than, say, 25% in a given year. So I've really tried to keep doing that. So there's always new things I can try in my class. There's new technologies I can adapt. The last 3 years I've been involved with this statewide group that's working on rethinking teacher education. It's been a time sink in some ways, but it's also been really, really re-energizing, because I completely revamped a course that I've probably taught 15 times last year. I revamped it, and that was really exciting. It almost killed me, but it was cool. And the students loved it. So, so those sorts of things, I guess I always just try to, look for new opportunities and new ideas, and not just put them in for the sake of putting them in, but putting them in if they really seem like they're going to really make a difference. And then on the balance, I just want to say, I've really been thinking about this balance thing recently. I don't think I did a good job when I was an associate professor necessarily, but I've been thinking about it recently, and I read a book this summer that Jess Broussard in the research office recommended to me. It's called The Productive Researcher. And I read it in the context of my job in the provost's office, because she thought, oh, this might be a good book for you to read too. Anyway, there was a couple things in there that really stood out to me. And one is to think about when an opportunity is really an opportunity. Because not everything that comes your way is really an opportunity. It might just be a time sink, but it's an opportunity if it's going to help you grow or develop in some way. And to really, when something falls on your lap, it's never going to be the only thing that falls on your lap. I think we feel that way sometimes, like, oh, what if I don't get asked again? You will get asked again and again and again. So to really think about when is something an opportunity and when is it going to be something that just really draws you away from what you should be doing. And the other I've used this strategy a couple times since I read the book. The idea was to use your yeses to say no. And and I've tried this strategy a couple times and it works great. So, you know, like for example, I just recently got asked to be an external reviewer on a P&T packet. But I had already done a couple this year and I really don't have time right now. And I just said, you know, I'm sorry, I've already done a couple this year. I can't take this one on. And they were like, oh, of course. Because I already had said yes. I told them I had already said yes to other things. So the no was actually like, oh, well, of course, that makes complete sense that you can't do that. Or, you know, I already have stuff committed at that particular time. You know, so actually using the yeses, the things you said yes to, as a reason why you have to say no to something, sort of softens the blow for other people. And you're not just that person then who won't do things. You're being intentional about doing things. So those are a couple of my strategies. They're new strategies, but I'm working on them.
I'm not sure I have ever had a strategy at all. And I don't think I ever reached any kind of balance. I think I just swung this pendulum from one side to the other all the time. And when you were talking about, you know, this book that says you shouldn't change your curriculum, and it's like, are you kidding me? I taught biology, and biology changes in the next 5 minutes. And if I felt if I didn't change and keep up with everything going on, or at least some of the hottest, latest stuff, I wouldn't be doing a good job for my students until, you know, eventually you begin to fizzle out because there's only so much you can read and insert and do, and you've got to still do the basic, you know, biology parameters. They have to go out with that. And so my husband used to look at me and go, you know, this is the third night in a row this week that you've fallen asleep with a biology textbook in your hand. It's like, you know, I pushed way too hard, so little signals would help me swing back, but I'm not sure my entire time I ever really met a balance. And I think if there was any advice I'd have is, you know, you can be your own judge, but maybe just a checklist that you look at once a month and go, well, how's my teaching? How's my this or how's my that? I wrote way too many proposals at one time and got them all, and then had too many graduate students, and everything began to fall apart on the other side. So just trying to maybe not think you have to do it all. And I was on the trail to do it all and do it well. That kept making big swings in my life. They're not easy to
Do you want to switch gears then to talk about planning? And
One thing I find puzzling, perhaps, or ironic about planning is I also see that sometimes you don't know ahead of time where you're going to find some inspiration for things. Quite a few times in my career as a graduate program director, graduate students have said, I'm in this discipline. Why do I need to take courses in this? It's wasting my time. They explicitly would say it's wasting my time. And they have some experience, but I would hope we have more experience and are trying to guide them to be better prepared for the unexpected. So I found some inspiration in many unexpected places. So some of the things you might find inspiration on might not take a whole lot of time, like making sure you schedule a certain number of times a semester to go to a Center for Teaching and Learning lunch or coffee chat. Two of them actually affected me in profound ways. One of them was the introduction of iClickers back in 2003. How many of you were here back? Brad Baltensperger and Sue Bagley were giving a presentation about these. I had no interest necessarily about those going in. You know, I had this conception that my lectures were just fine the way they were. But watching them do the demonstration during the lunch was really inspiring. So kind of the next step is don't just attend those lunches, pick one thing and do it. So I picked one thing. I said, I'm going to try that this summer. Summer's kind of a safe time to do an experiment. I had 25 students instead of 350 students. And it transformed my approach to introductory physics. And then that got implemented, you know, it just grew, not necessarily from me, but because of those other two that started it. You know, using these student response systems has really, really grown. And I found that a lot of fun, and it was kind of completely unexpected at the beginning. Another one that was interesting was going to one where they talked about enterprise. Again, I'm thinking as a physics professor, this is interesting, but it's not for me, it's irrelevant. But 3 years later, I started an enterprise with some other faculty, and that was another transforming experience. I worked with some students, undergraduates, on a very close basis. It's different than working with your graduate students. And at one point I was getting even kind of burned out and thought, well, maybe this is the last year. It was the first batch of seniors graduating from the enterprise. We had a little party and they gave me a gift. It was a memory stick and it had letters, personal letters from them to me. I was almost in tears reading those letters because I had no idea how they valued, you know, those interactions. It way took me by surprise. So you don't have to plan everything. Look for some opportunities to be inspired.
You know, when I was an associate professor, I did not do any career planning. I mean, quite honestly, I think I wasn't thinking forward. I was thinking that, phew, I made it through tenure. I can back off a little bit, which what a foolish thought that was. And, you know, and that maybe I would just be content with where I was. So I don't think I ever thought like, oh, I'm gonna go into administration, or I'm going to, I never really had that plan. I think I was sort of happy doing my teaching and my research. And so I think things have sort of evolved as opportunities have presented themselves to me. You know, and I'm probably in a different place now than I anticipated that I would be, but in a good way. And I think one of the things that I've learned is, I said it before, not every opportunity is an opportunity, but, you know, I have had chances during that time to do other things that, you know, that were presented to me. And I thought, I don't know, that doesn't really seem to excite me, or that doesn't seem like a good fit, or, you know, so I did pass things by, and I'm glad I did, because, you know, other things have come up that have been more exciting for me. You know, there's always different positions or opportunities presented on campus. Like when the job in the provost office, I worked with faculty development in the provost office. You know, that finally seemed like the thing that, wow, this could be a really good fit for me. It builds on a lot of the mentoring skills that I've learned working with student teachers and working with teachers out in the field. And, you know, I feel like I have a lot to share because I have been now successful in my research, and, you know, I can help other young faculty get off the ground. So that one seemed like a really good fit. So that was the one, even though I knew it would make me busier, but it seemed like it was the thing that I could really contribute. So I think my advice with the, you know, the planning is, you might have a plan, and if you know where you want to be, I did not, but if you know where you want to be, you know, certainly you should look for opportunities that move you in that direction. But for someone like me that didn't have a clear plan, you know, to really be deliberate about the opportunities that you take, and to think about which ones excite you in some way, which ones feel like they fit in with your work, that you have the right skill set for, you know, and which ones you should just let pass by. You know, for a good example is a few years ago, I was asked to work with a national organization on like making corporate connections and things like that. And I thought, oh, that is not me. I hate going to do things like that. I'm not a salesperson. I'm not, you know, but it seemed like a good opportunity because it was a leadership position in a national organization. And it seemed like maybe it would be good in some ways, but I did ultimately end up turning it down. But, you know, since then, I actually am taking on a different role for that same national organization, being the executive director and networking with other math ed organizations in the country. And that seems like a really good fit for me, because I'm not going to ask for donations and things like that. I'm actually making a difference in our field. So I think it's just a matter of sitting tight and just sort of waiting till the right thing comes along.
For me, if you have a question.
I was just going to ask a quick question. Sherry, you mentioned after being tenured that you thought, maybe I'll just be content right here. So what are everyone's thoughts about whether or not being content at an associate level is an acceptable place to be from an institutional perspective?
You know, I don't know. You know, it's interesting because I actually remember deliberately having a conversation with my husband about this. I said, I'm done with this rat race. I'm going to live here and I'm going to be good. I mean, I actually said it out loud to him that I was done being crazy. But, you know, I think what happened, I don't know where it is. I mean, for me, it just sort of snowballed. My research was really going well. And, you know, we had a lot of things going on. And like all the things were kind of rolling along and in place. So it just sort of, at that point, even though I said I wasn't going to do it, I was excited about what I was doing, so it took me there. I don't know. I think the university would like people to be promoted, but I also think that there's also a need for really good teaching, and there's a need for other things on campus. So I don't know. Do you have
Does anyone else have an opinion?
perception of what?
We're talking about things like the potential for burnout and the feeling that people are sort of lost in what they're doing. But from an institutional perspective, you want people to feel as though they're accomplishing what they want to accomplish, that it's rewarding for them, that they're finding something in what they're doing, that, you know, they're making a contribution. So I realize that at the institutional level, you know, you might want to be able to show that you've got this many full professors and things like that. But I think as well, we talk a lot about things like satisfaction and things like, you know, what's the level of contribution and, you know, how are faculty engaged and things like that. And so I think there's a little bit of a trade-off there. I don't think it's necessarily the case that everybody needs to follow this kind of lockstep progression, but I do think that the institution has some responsibility to help people realize the most they can out of the careers that they're doing. That should work to the benefit of both. So,
well, I'd like to answer more to that, but I want to finish this other real quick. You know, one thing for myself in career planning, and I really suggest it to everybody here, is sign up for championing my CUP student, get a diversity graduate student. I had a wonderful Native American student, which I learned a heap. And, you know, I had a KIP person come down and she wanted to shadow doctors, and somehow I called the right people and I got her in. She was in surgeries and everything else. And find some of these unique opportunities and grab at least one in your career, so that now that I'm retired, it's those things that are still giving me feedback and giving me happiness, because those people are still connected, and you know, you can feel like you made a difference, where sometimes the sea of 70 students, you don't get that opportunity. So I would plan to sign up for something along that line.
And one area in terms of resources we have to think about, I want to just mention real quick. I waited 25 years to take my first sabbatical. That was a mistake. It is so wonderful and refreshing. So when you earn your sabbaticals, you should take them, but also be thinking about, this is an area I think you do need some planning. You want to have that planned so you can be talking to your chair, maybe the dean, so you have the resources to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Because if you can take the whole year rather than the one semester, I think that's so much better. And the second one is, again, along with planning, you can be proactive with your chair. I have a bit of a fresh perspective being an interim now. A lot of faculty will come and say, I need, and that's okay, because it's part of my job to hear that and do what I can to help. If you can come to your chair with, I need, but I think I have an outline of a plan here, I think you're going to get a lot more traction. And yes, even a simple one would be next fall, if I can teach a double teaching load. I don't know if you can handle that or not, but then can I have a light load and then subsequent? You have to give them time to plan, but there could be opportunities that you can present a plan, and I think you'll get a lot of traction.
All right, so need to keep moving here, but now Sonia has an activity for us.
Yeah, maybe just one or two more quick questions since we didn't really have a lot of question time. Did anybody else have a question they wanted to ask the panel? And thanks to the panel for sharing.
So each of you are very successful, and being able to talk about successes is quite easy. But sometimes what some of us encounter is a setback or some obstacle. And for some, that obstacle is a career-altering event that changes a trajectory. And for some, it's a bump in a progression. Do you have any advice or comments regarding that fork in a career path?
One bump that I had was a paper that I published with a student. The student shared some information with another graduate student in Europe, and it sounded like a friendly collaboration, sharing data. They went ahead without our knowledge and published a paper explicitly trying to rebut our results. And I thought it was rather cruel and also dishonest the way they even represented some of our data. So then there's this choice, how are we going to respond to that? But one immediate choice that had to be made was talking with our own promotion and tenure committee in the department. If my work is going to be criticized, well, partly that's also how science goes. Maybe I was wrong, and that's all right. Someone took notice, and being wrong isn't necessarily the end of the world. That's part of how science advances. So entering those conversations is hard, but necessary.
I really think it's just sort of the attitude that you, or the way your perspective on those setbacks. And there's a lot of rejection in this field, and you get rejected and it's hard to take, and but I really think if you can frame all of that rejection as a learning opportunity. One of my mentors once told me that I get a day to feel sorry for myself. And then I need to get she told her exact words were, then I need to put on my big girl panties and move forward and figure it out. So and I think that's good advice. You always do feel, there's like that moment when you read the rejection letter and you're devastated, you put months and months and months into that project, and then step away from it and come back to it and think about what you learned from it. What do you need to do differently? Is it something that you can reframe and still get out? Is it something, but not to let those things. I will say in my career, I've never had a paper completely unpublished. I've gone to lower tier journals, I've reworked them into different things, but I've never had a piece that I've done that I've just completely let go. Although I came close last year, but I didn't. And so I think you just need to always think about it. Okay, so what am I going to do with this? I already did this work. What am I going to do? I know there's some value to it. How do I reframe it? And I've had some stuff in low tier journals because of that, but it's been out there. And sometimes for me, it's like, okay, I'm at least going to get a message out in teacher journals so that teachers that are out in the classroom can read it, which is not the same as a research club. But so I think it's just really like reframing failure and making the best of it.
I think you need to find somebody at the university you truly, truly, truly trust and can talk to them a lot, and get their feedback on, this came up, should I do it? What can I do? This fell apart, what should I do? And I'm not talking papers here. I'm talking, there's some big things that happen at the university. And I had an opportunity to help the university as an acting chair for a while, and then everybody gave me a lot of feedback that I was doing a really great job, and so then I tossed my hat in for the open position, and I got so slam dunked, it's taken me a long time to rebound from what happened after that. you just need somebody out there who will listen and give you a boost and help pick you up when you're down, and then, you know, help you regroup even and shove you in another area. I remember one person gave me some advice, well, why don't you go be a chair over in this department? I know nothing about that. I don't want to do that. And, you know, and yet it could have been a possibility, but I was so flummoxed that I didn't come back up to the surface for a while.
Okay, well, thank you very much, the panelists. Appreciate it. We're going to move on and do, let's see. We have a homework. Okay, so we're going to do an activity, and if the panelists want to sit in or listen, they can. It's on the back of this sheet that you got. We don't have a lot of time, and there's a lot in here, but the idea is to check off. So Patty and I actually had fun coming up with this, and we almost didn't stop. It was almost like, 10 pages long. These are things that you might be asked as an associate professor. And so the idea is check, in each column, check the ones you would say yes to, and then rank those in order. And then once you've done that, we'd like you to talk to somebody nearby and just talk to them about what your reasoning was, and then they'll talk to you about their reasoning, what their criteria were. Okay?
I wonder if in the interest of time, you might just pick something and then have a discussion with the person next to you about whether this is or is not a great opportunity and why you think so. So
or maybe
don't worry
just
about
do one
ranking
column.
Everything right now. Just go to each column, pick something, and then let's talk to people and next to you. We thought this was a peer activity, so you can have the same kind of fun we did. This was a lot of fun talking about these different kinds of opportunities. But choose something from each column and then share with a neighbor or two and talk about your reasoning for either saying yes or no to that opportunity.
And this definitely relates to some of what the panel had talked about. So, but can we just find out what some of the themes were from your groups? What were some of the criteria?
So I had a pretty good chat with the gentleman here. I'm actually a teaching faculty senior lecturer in the mechanical engineering department. What was very interesting with the lists that we have, if I were to invert my list, essentially check all the non-mandatory items which I have not, I almost replicate this list.
Oh, really?
Almost, not exactly, but to a very large extent.
So you had the opposite, but you ranked.
Yes, yes. So essentially, I was telling him that if we worked in the same department, we would have no conflict. So, and personally for me, it would seem that my list is organized towards the department's goals for me as a teaching faculty. I don't think that's bad necessarily, but it made me more aware of it.
That alignment could be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the biggest thing, well, I've always known, but it was pointed out here, all of my choices of things that I'd say yes to, and then the resulting prioritization, were all things that would allow me to better assist my students. So they were very learning more about students, going to career fair to learn about what jobs need, etc. So,
Is that good or bad?
well, I think it endorses where I'm currently at in my career. So
research-wise, you might want to incorporate students and, in terms of service, the things that have to do with what's going to directly contribute to what students are doing would be probably priorities. But knowing that you align with department goals, knowing that students are a top priority is kind of helpful, and saying, okay, how can I make the most of opportunities coming up? So,
Okay, so this is, I know we didn't have a lot of time, but you might want to, on your own, fill out the rest of the sheet. This is to get you to think about, like, how do you make those decisions? What are your criteria? Are they consistent criteria? Or are they kind of changing or whatever? And then we also, part of what we're trying to do here is also have you do some homework. So a reminder, or in case you didn't go to the last session was the kickoff, and we had asked people to read your unit's charter, talk to at least 2 senior faculty and or your chair to get interpretations. And we're not going to hold you accountable for that, but later when you get with your peer groups, we're going to ask peer groups to hold you accountable for the homework. Okay, so this is just a reminder here. So the current homework now is, and we are trying to build, so each homework will build, and eventually hopefully you'll be kind of trying to figure out your career path. But the current homework is kind of, if you've heard of a SWOT analysis for businesses, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, this is kind of the first part of that. Identify your strengths and weaknesses and compare those to what your career desires are to figure out what gaps need to be addressed. Now, you may want to build on a strength, so it's not just addressing your weaknesses. This may also mean I have these strengths, I want to build on them because that's going to take me farther. Okay, or it could be there might be some gaps, some weaknesses that you can ignore and some weaknesses that you can't ignore because you really do have to address it to do a good job. So essentially, you're doing this in order to get the gaps, and then later on, well, the next homework will help you figure out how to address those gaps. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, and then I think we just want to kind of go over the schedule again. So these are the next 2 workshops in this series. This was the balance. The panelists up here were asked to talk about how to keep a balance. And then the next one is going to be more about research intensive. Whoops.
Oops, sorry.
And then we have a leadership one.
These are probably already on your calendar if you're in the group we had access to for associate professors. So it will show up on your calendar and you can say yes, no, or maybe. And if not, there will be notices sent out where you can click on that and say yes, you'd like to come. So you may already see these on your calendar.
Everyone who's in attendance today will get an invite.
Today.
I will make sure that you all get an invite.
And as we talked about, we will be putting together in November, after the series of workshops, these peer mentoring groups where you're going to hold each other accountable and also explore other things that your group really would like to learn about, and we'll help you with that. And then you can go to the next one. And that's just kind of the rest of the schedule. And I do want to remind you, you will get an after, we do have, what are they called? iPads here if you want to do your survey now, or Brad can send you the survey later if you need to kind of run off. And I think that's the end, right? That's the last
I just
slide.
want to take a quick second to plug another. So I think, as we might have mentioned in the beginning, there are 3 aspects, or 3 adaptations that come with this advanced grant. And the Advanced Career Management Program is one of those. We talked a little bit about the responsive leadership, which covers the department chairs and other academic leaders. But there's also Advocates and Allies, which is open to faculty, academic leaders. I think Andrew might be letting staff come as well. But Advocates and Allies is a program started at North Dakota State, and we're adapting it to fit Michigan Tech a little bit better. It's geared towards training men to be more effective advocates and allies for gender equity. But at the same time, it's also bringing women and gender diverse individuals into the picture so we can understand what barriers they're facing. So it's going to be 3 separate workshops on the 17th and 18th of October. You only need to attend one. And in each workshop, we'll be splitting it out into 2 rooms so we can have concurrent sessions and get both sides of the picture to kind of figure out where to go from there with Michigan Tech. We really appreciate seeing you all here, and a Google Calendar invite is coming around for this probably in the next week or so.
Thanks so much for coming. We appreciate it.
We really do appreciate it. Thank you.